The concrete was a frozen slab against my skin, but the fire in my ribs was worse. 2 a.m. in Miami, and I was breathing in the scent of exhaust and my own blood. My left eye was a swollen weight, my lip a jagged mess, and my dress, once a symbol of a night out, was now a shredded rag of shame. Marcus had finally done it. 3 years of I love you had ended with him treating my body like a punching bag because I dared to exist in a crowded room. I watched his taillights fade, the bouncer's pity burning worse than the wounds. I was trash waiting for the morning sweep. Then the world went black as a massive SUV cut the streetlights, its engine purring like a beast over my broken body. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Get ready because today's journey is a roller coaster that starts in the darkest alley of Miami and ends in a way that will leave your heart racing. We're talking about a woman who lost everything, only to be picked up by the one man the entire underworld fears. This is a story of survival, a brutal reckoning, and a love that redefined what it means to be safe. If you believe that even the most broken soul can find a palace, hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss a single second of how a monster became a guardian. Let's dive into the world of Dante Moretti. The door creaked open and a pair of polished Italian leather shoes stepped into the grime. The man looked like he'd stepped off a billionaire's yacht. But his eyes, they held the coldness of a graveyard. Get her in, he said. No emotion. No hesitation. I tried to crawl away, my voice a pathetic rasp. I'm fine. Just calling a friend. I lied, but the moment I moved, the world tilted. Black spots swarmed my vision and I collapsed back into the dirt. He crouched, his expensive suit dipping into the filth without a care. Your name? He asked, his voice a low, vibrating bass. Or Rebecca, I choked out. I'm Dante Moretti, he replied. The air left my lungs. In Miami, that name wasn't just famous. It was a death sentence. Why? I whispered as hands as strong as iron lifted me into the plush interior of the SUV. The scent of expensive cologne and rich leather enveloped me, a jarring contrast to the metallic tang of my own blood. Dante sat across from me, his silhouette framed by the neon glow of the city outside. Call it a whim, he said, his eyes scanning my bruises like he was counting the debt Marcus owed him. Or call it a hatred for trash, who think they can break what isn't theirs. He didn't wait for a reply, he was already on the phone. Dr. Chen Penthouse, now. I have a girl who's been used as a doormat. Bring everything. I knew then, no police, no hospitals, no paper trails. I was entering the lion's den, and the door was locking behind me. The penthouse was a cathedral of glass and steel, hovering over the flickering lights of the coast. But to me, it was a blur of pain. Dr. Chen arrived like a whirlwind, her face hardening as she peeled back my torn dress. 3 ribs snapped, a concussion, an internal bruising that would kill a lesser woman. She clipped, her eyes darting to Dante. She needs a trauma center, Dante. He didn't blink. She stays here. Use my private wing. If she so much as winces in pain tomorrow, I'll consider it your failure. The authority was absolute. I felt the sharp prick of an IV, a wave of chemical peace washing over my screaming nerves. And as I drifted off, I saw Dante standing by the window, a dark shadow against a city he owned. I woke to the scent of high-end espresso and the unnerving feeling of being watched. Dante was there, draped in a chair like a king on a temporary throne, his eyes never leaving my face. My heart hammered against my taped ribs, the instinct to hide still screaming in my brain. Easy, he murmured, his voice surprisingly gentle. The doors are reinforced steel. The glass is bulletproof. No one enters this floor without my seal of approval. There was a terrifying possessiveness in his gaze, a weight that felt like golden chains. Why, Dante? What do you want? I asked. He leaned forward, the sunlight catching the silver in his hair. I want you to heal. And then, I want the name of the man who thought he could touch you, The words spilled out over the next week like a dam breaking. I told him about the 3 years of Marcus, how the accidental pushes became slaps, and the slaps became the alleyway. I confessed my shame, my belief that I was annoying or not enough, and how I'd stayed because I thought I could fix a broken man. Dante listened in a silence that felt heavier than a storm. His knuckles turned white as I described the night at the club. He told me he loved me while he was doing it, I whispered. Dante stood so fast his chair groaned. That wasn't love, Rebecca. That was a predator marking his territory. And he's about to find out what happens when he wanders into mine. 14 days. That's how long it took for the woman in the mirror to stop looking like a ghost. The swelling vanished, leaving behind eyes that were starting to spark with something other than terror. I walked the halls of his library, ate food prepared by a chef who treated every meal like art, and felt the luxury of the penthouse slowly seeping into my pores. But Dante was the constant. He was the sun my new world orbited around, protective, silent, and lethal. Tell me about the man behind the name, I challenged him one afternoon. He sat beside me, the mask of the boss slipping for just a fraction of a second. My father was a monster with his fists, he said, his voice hollow. I watched him break my mother until there was nothing left to bury. His confession was a blade to the heart. I was 11. I hid under the bed while she screamed. I promised her then that if I ever grew powerful enough, I would burn the world down before I let another woman scream like that. He looked at me then, and I saw the boy under the suit, the boy who couldn't save his mother but was determined to save me. I built this empire on blood and loyalty so I could dictate the rules. In my Miami, men like Marcus don't get second chances. They get erased. His words ignited a dormant fire in my soul. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like an equal to his rage. I wanted Marcus to feel the shadow Dante cast. The third week brought the ghost back to life. Marcus actually had the audacity to show up at the penthouse gates, clutching a bouquet of cheap roses and a scripted apology. He'd tracked me down, thinking I was just hiding, waiting for my master to come bring me home. I stood in the foyer, my heart racing, but I didn't hide. Dante appeared behind me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, a touch that felt like a loaded weapon. Baby, let's go home, Marcus pleaded, his eyes bloodshot and weak. I didn't mean it, you know how I get. Dante stepped forward, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. You, Dante breathed, and Marcus's face turned the color of ash. Dante Moretti, Marcus stammered, dropping the flowers as if they'd turned into snakes. I didn't know she was with you. Dante didn't shout. He didn't have to. She isn't with me. She is under my protection, which means every bruise you gave her, you gave to me. He stepped into Marcus's personal space, radiating a violence that was terrifyingly calm. You have 1 hour to leave this city. If the sun rises and you are still in Miami, my men won't just find you. They will dismantle you. You will never speak her name. You will never think of her. If you so much as dream about her, I will know. Marcus fled, stumbling over his own feet, a broken coward in the face of a true king. I watched him go, and for the first time in years I could breathe. The silence after Marcus left was profound. The threat was gone, but the reality remained. I was a guest in a palace built on secrets and blood. I should leave, I said, though my heart wasn't in it. I had no apartment, no money, and a shadow that still followed me. Dante turned to me, his eyes searching mine. Leave for what? To find another Marcus? To sleep in a shelter? The truth hurt. I had nothing. Stay, he commanded, though this time it sounded like a plea. Work for me. My restaurant needs someone with your eye for detail. Don't be my guest, be my partner. Learn how to never need a man like me again. It was a trap, perhaps, but it was a trap that offered a throne. I stayed, and I transformed. I traded my fear for a business suit and my silence for a voice that commanded a staff of 50 at The Gilded Rose, Dante's flagship restaurant. He didn't hand me success. He handed me the tools and watched me sharpen them. I learned the art of the deal, the power of a look, and the strength of a woman who has nothing left to lose. But beneath the professional veneer, the tension between us was a live wire. Dante was a phantom in the back of the room, watching me lead, his pride almost visible in the air. "Why do you look at me like that?" I asked him late one night over a bottle of wine in the empty dining room. Dante swirled his glass, the city lights reflecting in the dark liquid. "Because I thought I was saving a ghost," he whispered, "but I was just holding the door open for a queen." He walked toward me, his presence overwhelming. "I've spent my life surrounded by people who fear me or want to use me. But you see the man who hid under the bed. And I realize now that I'm not just protective of you because of my mother. I'm protective of you because you're the only light I've ever had in this dark business." He touched my cheek, his hand trembling slightly. "I'm a monster, Rebecca. I've done things that would make you hate me. But I love you more than I love my own power." My heart didn't just beat, it roared. I kissed him, shattering the wall between us. Our love was a beautiful war. As soon as we went public, the vultures circled. My presence wasn't just a romance, it was a weakness in the eyes of his rivals. One rainy Tuesday, a black van screeched to a halt outside the restaurant. Masked men, heavy artillery. They wanted the boss's woman for leverage. The air was filled with the deafening cracks of gunfire and shattered glass. I dove behind the marble bar, my heart in my throat. But Dante's security was a wall of lead. The skirmish was over in minutes, but the message was clear. Being with Dante meant living in the crosshairs. "I'm a target," I told him that night, shaking in his arms. "I'm going to get you killed." Dante held me until the shaking stopped, his jaw set in stone. "No," he said, his voice cold and final. "You aren't a target. You're the reason I'm changing the game." That night, the Moretti Empire began to shift. Dante started the purge. He systematically dismantled the drug routes, the human trafficking ties, and the dirty money that had built his family. His associates were furious. Men who lived for the chaos didn't want the light. But Dante was a hurricane. He didn't just ask them to change, he forced them. "I'm building a world where my wife and my future children can walk the street without a bodyguard," he declared. He was burning his own kingdom to build a sanctuary for me. 6 months later, he called me into his office. Not the dark mahogany room of a mobster, but a bright modern space in the heart of the financial district. He slid a folder across the desk. It wasn't a gift. It was a deed. "The Gilded Rose is yours, legally, entirely. No ties to my name or my past," he said. I looked at the papers, my hands shaking. "Dante, this is millions." He stood up and walked around the desk, taking my hands. "It's your independence, Rebecca. I never want you to stay because you're trapped. I want you to stay because you're free. You are a businesswoman now. You owe me nothing." I realized then that his love wasn't about possession. It was about empowerment. I took that restaurant and turned it into a legend. It became a haven for women like me, survivors who needed a first job, a safe paycheck, and a boss who understood what it meant to hide a bruise. The Gilded Rose became the heart of Miami's social scene, a place of elegance and healing. Dante watched from the sidelines, a proud shadow, as I grew into the woman I was always meant to be. Our life was a whirlwind of success and passion, a far cry from the alleyway where we met. And then, as the sun dipped below the Atlantic on our anniversary, he took me to the roof of the tallest building in the city. The sky was a bruised purple, beautiful and deep. Dante didn't say a word as he dropped to one knee, the wind whipping his hair. He held out a ring that looked like it was forged from starlight, a massive diamond flanked by deep blue sapphires. "Rebecca, you found me when I was just a man seeking vengeance. You taught me that power is useless if it doesn't protect what matters. You are my soul, my partner, and my peace. Will you spend the rest of your life making me a better man? Will you marry me?" through tears that blurred the city lights, I found my voice. Yes. 1,000 times. Yes. We were two broken pieces that had finally clicked into a masterpiece. The wedding was a dream of white roses and soft music on a private estate. It wasn't a Mafia wedding. There were no displays of force, only displays of love. Dante's sister hugged me, whispering how the Stone King had finally melted. We stood under a canopy of jasmine, and as we exchanged vows, I looked at the man who had once been a monster to the world. He was my husband. He was the man who had seen me at my absolute worst and decided I was worth everything. We danced until the stars came out, a celebration of a survival that had turned into a triumph. Our first year of marriage was a revolution. Dante finalized the transition of his empire into a legitimate real estate and tech conglomerate. The transition wasn't peaceful. He had to face down old friends who preferred the shadows. There were nights he came home with blood on his collar, but his eyes were always clear. "The old Moretti is dead," he would tell them. "If you want to play in the mud, do it without me, but if you touch my interest, I will bury you in the light." He was a titan of industry now, but he still held the door for me every single day. The news of my pregnancy was a thunderclap of joy. When I showed Dante the test, he didn't just smile. He fell to his knees and pressed his forehead against my stomach, weeping silently. The man who had faced down assassins was undone by a tiny heartbeat. "A new legacy," he whispered. "A life born in peace, not in blood." He became a sentinel, obsessing over my health, my comfort, and my safety. He would spend hours talking to my belly, telling our unborn daughter about the empire of kindness he was building for her. "You will never know the fear your mother knew," he promised. "I will be the wall between you and the dark." Lucia was born in the quiet hours of a spring morning, and seeing Dante hold her was the most beautiful sight of my life. His massive hands, which had once dealt in violence, were now cradling a tiny, fragile miracle. He was terrified of her smallness, her purity, but he stepped up with a grace that surprised everyone. The mob boss was now the man who sang Italian lullabies and stayed up at 3 a.m. to rock a crying infant. Lucia became the center of our universe, a living testament to the fact that redemption isn't just a word, it's a person. But the past has a long reach. A rival from the old days decided that Dante had grown too soft. They staged a hit at my restaurant while I was there with Lucia in her stroller. The sound of a submachine gun shattered the afternoon peace, glass raining down like diamonds. Dante's lead security guard threw his body over us, the sound of returned fire echoing through the dining room. No one was hit, but the terror was back. The violation of our sanctuary sent a shockwave through our lives. That night, Dante sat in the nursery watching Lucia sleep, his eyes glowing with an ancient, terrifying fire. "They made a mistake," he whispered. "They thought I was weak because I'm happy." The retaliation was swifter and more absolute than anything Miami had ever seen. Dante didn't use guns. He used his new legitimate power. He bought their debts, seized their properties, and exposed their crimes to the authorities. Within 72 hours, the rival gang didn't just lose their power, they lost their names. They were erased from the city's economy and its streets. "Death is too merciful for someone who threatens my child," Dante told his council. "They will live in the poverty they tried to inflict on others." It was a reminder to the world. Dante Moretti hadn't lost his teeth. He'd just learned to bite where it hurt the most. The years that followed were a golden age. Our second daughter, Sophia, arrived with a shock of dark hair and Dante's stubborn chin. Our home was filled with laughter, the scent of home-cooked meals, and the absolute security of a love that had survived the forge. I expanded my business, opening the Gilded Rose Foundations across the country to help other survivors. Dante became a silent benefactor, a dark angel who funded escapes and legal battles for those who couldn't fight for themselves. We weren't just a family. We were a force for good, built on the ruins of a dark past. 5 years after that night in the alley, we stood on our balcony watching our daughters play in the garden below. The Miami skyline was a backdrop to our peace. Dante pulled me against his chest, his heart beating a steady, calm rhythm against my back. "Do you ever think about the driver taking that wrong turn?" he asked softly. I leaned my head back against his shoulder. "Every single day, a wrong turn that led to the right life." He kissed my temple, his hand resting on the small of my back. "I was a dead man walking until I saw you on that concrete, Rebecca. You didn't just survive. You saved me. And that, my friends, is the power of a second chance. From a woman left for dead to a queen of her own making, and a monster who found his soul in the act of protection. If this story moved you, if it made you believe that there is a light waiting for you even in your darkest hour, please hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to know that their bruises don't define their future. Don't forget to subscribe and join our family for more stories of healing and heart. Now, I want to hear your voice in the comments. Do you believe that love can truly wash away a dark past? Would you have taken Dante's hand that night? Tell me. Stronger together. If you're ready to reclaim your own power, see you in the next one. And remember, your story isn't over yet.